Micah, the Levite, and the tribe of Dan. In our last story, we learned about Samson's weakness for Delilah, leading him to reveal the secret to taking away his strength. Samson was bound and captured by the Philistines, and they gouged out his eyes. Samson, with one final push with the strength of God, toppled the Philistine temple and killed 3,000. In this story, we learn about the dark ages of Israel, where everybody did what was right in their own eyes. We follow the life of Micah, a man struggling to find peace, and the tribe of Dan, a tribe struggling to find home, inspired by the book of Judges. The state of Israel was descending into madness. All tradition, devotion, and prayer was diluted by the worship of false gods. All sense of right and wrong was eroded by years of small compromise, and the Israelites found themselves in an apathetic daze. It was truly a different form of captivity. Instead of being chained by an opposing nation, they were shackled by their own faithlessness. During that time, there was a man who lived in the hill country of Ephraim, named Micah. Micah was a confused but honest man. One day he stole 1,100 pieces of silver from his mother. When his mother cursed the silver because it was stolen, Micah quickly returned it. When Micah returned the silver to his mother, she melted it down and made a carved image. "I dedicate this to the Lord and to my son," she said. So Micah erected a shrine for his carved image and placed it there with other household gods. There, on the hills of Israel, Micah began to build his own little temple for false gods to mingle with the God of Israel. Micah, impressed with his exploits, appointed his son as priest over his household. Micah's debased practice revealed a sickness that plagued the hearts of Israel. Micah paid no attention to God's law to not create any false gods. Instead, he nodded in approval at the wonderful work he had done. Little did he know, he was creating a temple of straw, waiting to be blown away by the wind. A young man was passing through the hill country near Micah. He was a Levite from the family of Judah. Levites had a home for themselves, serving God and the people of God. But this man wanted to forge his own way and do what was right in his own eyes. Micah spotted the young man from afar and brought him near. "Where do you come from?" Micah asked. "I am a Levite of Bethlehem. I have come from far to find my own place and forge my own path," the young man responded. "Come in and stay with me a while," Micah said. "I am in need of a priest over my shrine. I will pay you 10 pieces of silver a year and provide you with a home and food." The Levite agreed, and the two of them worshipped their idols as well as the God of Israel. Micah was convinced that having a Levite in his home would bring him blessings from God, for in his mind, title was all that mattered. He would be terribly mistaken. There was no king and no judge to rule over Israel. Each man and woman wrote their own laws and lived by their own desires. The tribe of Dan, instead of bravely seizing the land God had intended for them, shrunk away and lived without a home. So they wandered in search of an inheritance. One day the tribe of Dan sent out spies to scour the country and search for land to conquer. On their travels they stumbled upon the house of Micah. When they saw that there was a Levite among them, the men were curious. "Who brought you here?" they asked. "What is your business here?" "Micah has hired me as his priest, so I dwell here," he said. The Danites perked up with curiosity. Levites were rare, and the chosen priests of God. The people of Israel craved any sort of favor from God they could get, for their interaction with him was few and far between. "Please, ask God if we will succeed in finding land for ourselves," the Danites requested. "Go in peace," the Levites said. "The Lord will watch over you." So the Danites left with confidence. The men traveled far and came to the land of Laish that was inhabited by the Sidonians. The Sidonians were a quiet people. They kept to themselves and tended to the fields around them. Children played in the grass while their mothers and fathers farmed and tended to their herds. The Danites saw that the land was rich, and the Sidonian people were weak. Like a wolf licking its chops at a helpless lamb, the Danites planned their attack. 600 men from the tribe of Dan rose against the Sidonians with weapons of war and hatred. They marched towards the hill country and passed by the home of Micah once again. The 5 men that spoke to the Levite approached the home with their weapons while Micah was gone. They burst through the door and took Micah's shrine, his carved image, and his household gods. Then they turned to the Levite. He cowered in the corner, afraid of what they might do to him. The 5 men approached him with their swords in hand. Slowly one of them brought his sword to the Levite's chest and said, "Tell me, what is better?" A sly grin arose from his face. To be a priest to one man, or to a whole tribe? It took a moment for the Levite to understand what the man was saying, but when he did, his frown was replaced by a smile. The men embraced and laughed. The Levite packed his things and left with the 600 men, leaving Micah's home ransacked and emptied of all its gods. Micah discovered that his possessions had been taken, so he gathered surrounding men to ambush the tribe of Dan. They ran towards the 600 men, sending the children out in front of them so Dan would not attack first. Using children as a human shield, Micah spoke with a booming voice filled with anger. "How dare you take what is mine? What is wrong with you that you would take my gods and my priest?" he shouted. The men of Dan turned around and stared at Micah and his small army of children and villagers. They posed no threat to them. "Shut up," they yelled. "Turn around, or you will lose your life along with the lives of your household." The people of Dan turned their backs to him and walked away. Micah, now cooling down from his rage, realized that he was no match for them. Ashamed and stripped of his false sense of holiness, Micah wandered back to his broken home, alone. The sun was setting, and the people of Dan looked upon the land of Laish. The city was quiet. A subtle whistle of the wind blew through the valley. The tribe of Dan descended down the hills into the valley. They passed each home quickly and struck down each member of the city with the edge of the sword. Not a scream could be heard, for their swords swung swiftly and in total surprise. After the men had struck down every soul with their blades, they set the city on fire for good measure. The flames illuminated the skies. Dan rebuilt the city and inhabited it. They named the city Dan, and their families thrived in their new home. They set up the carved images they stole from Micah and set them in the house of God. What began as small idolatry for Micah turned into the idolatry of an entire tribe of Israel. The entirety of Dan knelt down to the silver image that was formed by Micah's mother, and their descent into more madness continued. God looked upon them, still loving and still patient. He remained waiting for a moment to deliver his people once again.